Breaking news out of the NBA. The Mavericks are firing general manager Nico Harrison.
Alrighty, we should be live. Nathan Burnett, episode 85. I know it's been a minute, guys. Just had a lot going on. Had some family over for a while. My brother, who's in the Navy, came over for a few days as well. Halloween going on, and also I've talked a lot about my mental health and stuff on here as well. So I had a lot going on with that, but I know y'all don't want to get into that, but that's just for the few people that have sort of wondered where I've been. But been meaning to record something for you guys. Again, I know it's been a few weeks. So let's go ahead and get into it because there's been a lot that's gone on since last I talked to you guys. The biggest one obviously being that Nico has finally been fired. I actually had to re-record this because as I was recording, nothing was fully confirmed about him being fired. It was just there's speculation that he may be fired within the next few days. And then he actually ended up getting fired like right after I recorded something. So I need to re-record now with the confirmation that he has been fired. His Instagram bio has been updated, and the owner of the Mavericks even put out a letter, which I will go ahead and read here in a minute to let you guys know what it said. But I wanted to talk a little bit about that because, again, that's the biggest news that we have so far. And then I will also talk about teams that are doing really well right now, and then teams that I think are sort of a pretender, contender versus pretender this early into the season. And also talk about a prospect that I've had my eyes on in college basketball as well. So let's go ahead and get into it. So with the whole Nico firing, again, it was a long time coming, and I think this gives a lot more significance than people are giving it. Or let me rephrase that. It's giving significance in a different way than people think, right? Because a lot of people are happy that he's fired. You know, he's paying for his crimes, things like that. But I think this more so puts to rest a lot of the Vegas conspiracies that were going on for a while. Obviously, the owners of the Mavericks, they come from a Vegas background. And so there was this big sort of conspiracy after the Luka trade that was basically claiming that the trade was done intentionally in order to tank the team's sort of stock value in order to move the team to Vegas, where they could get all the gambling money. The owners have roots there, things like that. But I think that by firing Nico, they have sort of put that to rest. And that leads into the next point, which is that I think the Nico firing was sort of a way to show that they are fully committed to turning things around, but also disconnecting themselves from the old franchise. So I do think that now that Luka is gone, they want to sort of make an identity. These new owners want to make an identity for themselves as their era of the Mavs. And they can't have, if they want to define what their era of the Mavs is, they can't have that be marked as a negative era, right? If you want your time on a team to be historic, you obviously don't want it to be historically in a negative way. And so Nico was one piece that still came from Mark Cuban's time in the organization. And so with removing him, they can now put their own GM in place that they want. And if they trade AD and possibly Kyrie, which I'll get into, they can rebuild this roster around Cooper Flag, which I think their plan obviously is. And they will sort of have their new era, I guess. Again, era is the best word I can think of at the moment to describe it, where you have this section of time that marks Mark Cuban's. That's difficult to say. It shows Mark Cuban's time there, and then you have the new owners, and you now have this sort of cutoff point that shows this is what their time owning the franchise is going to be like. And I think that was a big motivator behind it, not just trading Luka, but also they want to completely detach themselves from Cuban in a way and make their own identity. And so they want to get rid of Nico, put their own GM in place, and then again possibly get rid of AD and these players that Nico brought in as well, in order to create a whole new identity that they are the owners of. Of course, they're the owners of the team on paper, but you know what I mean? Like, they are, this is theirs, they can put their name to, because some owners sometimes are more hands-off and just let the GM handle everything while they make the money. But I think this is their way of saying, like, we want to be in control and make our own name of what the Mavericks should be like. And with that, I definitely do think Anthony Davis is going to be traded. It again goes into that same reason that they want to make their own identity, so they're going to remove themselves from any sort of pieces that are still holding on from that era. But also, the team is just two-pronged right now. You have these older veterans like Anthony Davis and Kyrie, where you got to sort of milk the last bit of basketball that they have in them before they retire. And then you have Cooper Flag, who's a rookie, who you have to work on developing him and sort of instead molding him into the player that you want. And those narratives are kind of conflicting, because Nico even said that before he was fired that the Mavs are in a win now mentality, which doesn't make sense if you are drafting rookies and you look like you're in a rebuild right now. Again, he got a lot of flack for that, which again, he was fired, because how can you be in a win now mentality when you're trading away Luka? But again, it doesn't, if you were to show someone the ages of the players of the Mavs now with Kyrie and Anthony Davis, it doesn't look like they're in a win now mentality, because they have these veterans, but then they have a mix of all these young players too. It doesn't really make sense. And so they have to completely blow it up and then rebuild around Cooper Flag. And so that's just the start. The thing is, too, to add to all of that, that I did see people like Kenny For Real speculating that what if the fire Nico chants are just the beginning, right? Because I'm sure y'all have seen, this is the first time in 24 years that the stadium has not sold out. And they had all these fire Nico chants. They had this realm of negativity around the team, but the team is still going to lose whether Nico's there still or not. They're still going to have this long series of games where they don't win. And if the fans are still negative about that, which they obviously will, and they're just not having fun, then what becomes the new chant? Again, Nico became the scapegoat, and deservedly so. But these owners still approved that trade. And so if they keep making negative decisions or keep losing games, then does the new chant become sell the team? Which, again, Kenny for real speculated. And if that's the case, that's really what you don't want. Because, again, I just talked about how these owners want to talk about, like, these owners want to create their own era of what Mavs basketball is. They want something they can put their name on and say, this is what we created. But if it's super negative and nobody wants you there, eventually you're going to be forced out, just like Nico, right? And that would really suck for these owners specifically, because they've also put so much money, or they've put money into potentially building a new arena as well. Sorry, got my words jumbled up there. But they just bought a big plot of land in order to build a new arena. So if they end up having to sell the team or whatever the case is before that new arena is built, then they are down a large sum of money for owning all this land that they were going to put their team on, and then having to get rid of said team. So I think that a lot of people, again, are very happy that Nico got fired. I definitely am. But I don't think that this is the end of the Mavericks struggles. And I definitely think that this is the owner's way of saying that they want to have their staple and their name on something new. And I don't think that Nico will get another GM job because, again, he's known as the guy who traded Luka. But even before he traded Luka, I told people that he was going to make poor decisions, because this is the same guy that messed up the Nike deal for Steph Curry. I'm sure all of you guys have seen that that Jimmy High Roller video on how someone messed up the Curry deal with Nike. That was Nico. That's him. That's literally the same guy. Ironically, this is a weird tangent, but I just watched Endgame last night with my girlfriend because we're doing an MCU rewatch, and it feels like that scene where Banner is talking to Iron Man about Thanos and how it connects to Loki, and just being like, the attack on New York, Thanos, that's him. And it's me trying to tell y'all about this deal that Nike fucked up with Steph Curry, and just being like, the deal with Nike, that's him, that's Nico. Like, guys, come on. So Nico has always had this like trail of disappointments behind him, and it just took the Luka one to really open people's eyes to it. Because even Quentin Grimes, he was traded away by Nico as well, and he's doing incredible right now. And yeah, it's just it's a lot to take in. So, but I've been talking, I think, about 10 minutes now or more about Nico. So I'll go ahead and get into let's get into the teams that have been doing well lately. But first, I'm going to adjust my camera because it looks like it's a little crooked. So let me fix that real quick. So I wanted to talk more about the teams that I think are doing well and the teams that are sort of pretenders. Again, it's the easiest term to use, contender versus pretender, because I see a lot of people talking about these teams like the Bulls, the Pistons, especially, are 9-2 right now. And I see a lot of people talking about, oh, these teams were so unexpected to do well. They can even make a playoff run. And there are some teams that I think that is accurate, and some teams, again, like the Pistons, where I don't think that's as accurate. The Pistons is a big example because, again, I think this really divides up how you can see the people that actually watch the games and know the schedule and the stats and everything versus people that just look at the standings and see, oh, this team's doing well, and they don't look at the injuries, the schedule, etc. So the Pistons, as a perfect example, the Pistons have not had that crazy of a schedule. They've been playing teams like the Wizards, the Nets, the let me relook up their schedule. But from what I remember whenever I was looking at their schedule, because I had to refresh myself, is they're playing these lower seeded teams to begin with. And they honestly are not playing a super crazy team until almost December. So looking at their past schedule, they played the Bulls, and then they won against the Rockets, which I can give them credit for. But they lost again, or they won against the Celtics with no Jason Tatum. They lost against the full Cleveland roster. That's even without Darius Garland. They won against the Magic. They won against the Mavericks, who I just talked about. They won against the Grizzlies. They won against the Utah Jazz. But then they also played the Nets, the 76ers, and the Wizards. And then if we go to their upcoming schedule, again, it's a bunch of either injured or low-seeded teams. They have the 76ers again. They have the Pacers with no Halliburton. The Hawks possibly with no Trae Young. The Pacers again. The Celtics again with no Jason Tatum. They have the Magic. They have the Atlanta Hawks. Again, possibly with no Trae Young. They have the Bucks a few times sprinkled in there, which could give them trouble. But then they have the Dallas Mavericks, the Hornets. And then they have a few okay teams, like they have the Blazers, the Kings, the Jazz. But the only teams I could see them really giving them trouble is not until December 30th when they play the Lakers, and then they play the Heat January 1st, and the Cavaliers January 4th, and then the Knicks January 5th. So Cleveland, it entirely depends on injuries, but I think once we get into January is when they're just gonna start getting fucked, for lack of a better term. Because January 27th, they play the Nuggets. Then they play the Suns, the Warriors, the Nuggets again, the Knicks again. Then they play the Spurs in February. They play the Thunder right after the Spurs. Then Cleveland again, the Spurs. Like, it's not going to be until 2026 rolls around that the Pistons really have that difficult of a team to play. And so I think these people that they go, oh my gosh, the Pistons, like nobody expected this. They're 9-2. It's like, yeah, because they're playing teams that have only won 30% of their games. And with other teams, like the Bulls, it's a little bit of a mix of that. I think the Bulls have had a little bit harder opponents, but they still have had some easy games. But with teams like the Rockets, I would say, are doing decent. They still lost against the Spurs, who I obviously like, as all of y'all can tell. Even with some BS calls, which I know I'm going to get people saying I'm biased on that because I'm a Spurs fan. But please go watch the slow-mos of a lot of those ref calls, because it was just atrocious. Like, Sengun gets, like, tapped in the nose and he goes like 4 feet back and the entire crowd was chanting flopper at him. It was bad, but we still ended up winning by 11 because I watched the ending of that game was crazy. The last like 2 minutes, like they were fighting for the ball, and yeah, it was a crazy game. But anyway, getting sidetracked, is the Rockets are doing decent. The Bulls are doing decent. And the Knicks are doing all right. And I think this really comes down to 2 key things. It's defense, which I've talked about a lot, and also balancing your roster. And what I mean by that is that you look at the Thunder, who won last year's championship, and they have really good depth, which I'm going to get into with the other teams. And they also have the number one defensive rating right now. You also have the Spurs, who I believe are third in defensive rating. And you have a lot of these other teams that are being really consistent, that they're high in the defensive rating. And I've always been a proponent of that defense is, again, the motto, defense wins championships, which, again, that saying has been tarnished now that Nico said it. But before Nico, that's always been the saying in any sport, football, basketball. Defense wins championships has been a motto that has carried a lot of teams to that finish line. And a lot of that has been shown this early in the season. And I think that's really lost later into the season, as we've seen these past few years, is that these teams that do really well early season do really well defensively. And then you get into the playoffs where these teams are scoring super high on each other and they're going for more offense versus defense, and that completely gets forgotten about until the next season comes around, and again, it's defense heavy again. And so I really would like to see a high defensive team with sort of a average offense win the championship, because I think that will really open a lot of people's eyes to the defense wins championships mantra. And with the rest of that, the second point that I stated was the balancing your bench, right? Or balancing your roster, sorry. Because the Pistons, again, they're the outlier of this, where you look at the field goal attempts and the points per game, and you really just have Cade Cunningham there. You have Jalen Duren as well, and you have Duncan Robertson, but it's just not as divided up of an effort. Versus you look at these other teams where the Rockets, as much as I hate KD, they have been able to divide up that effort with KD, and Sengun's points per game have gone up. These other people on the roster are doing well. And the Bulls as well. The Bulls, you have Josh Giddey, who, while Josh Giddey is having the most points per game and the most field goal attempts per game, the rest of the team is still getting their minutes in. They're getting... everyone is getting a decent amount of three-pointers attempted and field goal attempts evenly spread out. Versus you have these other teams like Boston with Tatum being injured, Jaylen Brown and Derek White pick up a lot of that load, and you look at their field goal attempts and three-point attempts per game, and they're having like nearly 10 three-pointer attempts a game, which the Celtics have already been known as a high three-point percentage team, especially when they went up against the Warriors a little while back. But still, it seems like they're just sort of lobbing it up and hoping for the best, because they don't have these other pieces around their team, especially now that they traded Porzingis as well. They don't have that same core team that they once had that could make it to the finals. They've traded away their pieces. Tatum is injured. And so they're highly dependent on these like two or three people. And that's a huge problem with these other teams as well. The Magic, as much as I love JX Remy, got to see him in person a little while ago. They really focus primarily on Banchero and Desmond Bane now. And you can go and watch the highlights as well, or watch the games live. And that really is their strategy when playing, is they just look for Banchero or Desmond Bane to be open and just pass it to them. And none of these other people on the team are getting like too many touches or putting up too many attempts per game. It's really them two that are trying to quote unquote carry the team. But again, they're middle in the pack on defense. They're middle of the pack on offense. And so they're consequently middle of the standings. And again, you look at these other teams and they're evenly divided. Everybody has decent assist numbers. Everybody has decent minute numbers. And someone goes down and someone on the bench can not like fully replace them, but can still play their part to have a cohesive roster. And that was something that I hoped for Cleveland. That's why I was so gung-ho on Cleveland the last 3 years, was because I feel like they had depth. They had both Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. And while Evan Mobley is more of a power forward, and they play him at power forward, he's listed at power forward, both Mobley and Allen can play the 5. And then you have Darius Garland and Mitchell, who are both decent guards. And they had some other decent guards as well, like they had Karis LeVert, and they had I'm blanking on his name, I'm sorry. But they had some really decent guards, and they've traded away a few of their guards, and now a lot of the team is injured. And right now, last I checked on injury report, Garland is out, Mitchell is out, and Mobley is out. And so we have to see if this team is really going to be as good with their depth as I've been saying they've been, because if not, then this team, injuries is going to kill them. This is one of the... I will stand on the point that the Cavs right now are one of the best teams when healthy. But again, this team has seen so many injuries. And I used to think that their depth would save them, but lately it hasn't. Again, I've just talked about how teams like the Pistons, teams like the Bulls, and these other more mid-standing teams in recent years are beating these Cavs because they just, all of their star players are sitting out right now. And we can look at the Spurs. Obviously, the Spurs have Wemby, but we were also missing Fox for a while. We were missing Cornette for a while. We were missing Sohan for a while. But we still went 5-0 for the first time in history, and that's because we have everybody playing a role. We have Champagny. We obviously have Wemby, but we have Harper. We have Castle. We're doing a decent job at filling these positions that we have injured players, with the exception of Cornette, because with Cornette, Wemby is really the only decent big that we have. That's why we traded for Luke Cornette, was because we needed another big player on the floor with Wemby in case Wemby gets tied up. Or if Wemby has to decrease his minutes for whatever reason, or whatever the case is, then Cornette can come in as well, versus leaving us playing almost entirely small ball when Wemby's not on the floor. So yeah, I definitely think that there is going to be a massive change in standings over these next few weeks, especially once we get into 2026. But we'll have to wait and see, obviously. Maybe these teams pull off some miraculous wins and stay where they're at, but I personally really do not see that happening. I could talk on the Ja Morant situation for a little bit, but I want to wait until more comes out with that. I do think that the best option would be to trade him. I'll sort of leave it at that. But you need to get more pieces on the Grizzlies team as a whole, because when Ja Morant was injured, or not injured, excuse me, suspended for 25 games at the start of the 23 to 24 season, they only won 6 games, but the 6 games that they won, Desmond Bane and Triple J were their top scorers for every single one of those 6 games that they won, and now they've traded away Desmond Bane. So your second option outside of Ja is gone. And so you not only need to get rid of Ja for a better playmaker, but you also need somebody, again, goes back to that conversation we just had about depth and balancing the roster. You really need more pieces around the roster. Even if you trade Ja for like some superstar talent, that superstar talent isn't going to carry the team. You need to trade Ja and whatever you can for like 3 decent role players or something. Flip him for more than just 1 or 2 decent players, or 1 or 2 like high players for more like just decent role players that can do what they need to do. But the next thing I wanted to talk about, and what I'll end it off on, and I'll talk more about this in the future, is people talk about how Wemby is dominating the league right now, being as tall as he is and the freak of nature that he is, in a good way. But there is a kid that is now playing for Florida, and before he played in Canada, who is 7'9", and his name, when I looked at it, is pronounced Oliver Ryu, I believe is how you say his last name. And I want to talk more about him in some ongoing podcast episodes, because I know this was said about Wemby and a lot of taller players, and so it's sort of become a boy who cried wolf situation with tall players like this, to say they're a unicorn or whatever the case is. But watching this kid play genuinely looks like old clips of watching George Mikan play back in the early days of the league. When George Mikan played, he was so tall and dominant that they literally had to make new rules for the NBA, like the shot clock, because the only way that other teams could beat him was keeping the ball away from him. And George Mikan was so tall that he could just stand and dunk, or just stand and shoot the ball in, stand and block, rebound, all that, before those stats were obviously recorded. But this kid is the exact same. He's 7'9", and he's dunking and shooting and blocking without even jumping. And again, Wemby is doing similar things, where Wemby, all these people are posting clips and highlights of Wemby blocked this shot without even jumping. This kid is doing the same, but even on a bigger scale, because he even has inches on Wemby. And so if this kid gets drafted into the NBA, then he's definitely going to be sort of the Wemby matchup. And the thing with him as well is, you see with a lot of these centers and taller players that they're skinny, right? That's their sort of main weakness. Is we saw with Chet Holmgren before he went to Gonzaga, was everybody was talking about how tall Chet Holmgren was as well, how Chet was a unicorn as well. Obviously not to the extent of Wemby. But the problem with Chet is that he had such a small frame before he went to Gonzaga. And I talked about that as well. And that's a criticism with a lot of taller players, is that they have the height, but because they're so tall, they're not able to add muscle onto it. But when you watch Ollie play, he has a bit of meat on his bones, which is good. He's listed at 7'9", 305, which again, isn't too shabby. And so I really think that he'll be a problem if he gets the chance to play, because that's been another point of contention, is that he's playing at Florida State right now. And he got put into a game when Florida was already up 41 points on University of North Florida. And if you look at his stat line, you can't gather anything from his stat line because he got 2 minutes and he didn't get the ball at all. And so his stat line is a full 0. And you watch the game, and that's because his teammates just won't give him the ball. And that's a huge problem with college basketball that I've talked about, is that so many of these kids now, because of NBA scouts, just want to have the highlight play, have the crazy stats for the NBA scouts. What they don't realize is that in doing that, they're actually doing the opposite, is that they're showing these NBA scouts that they can't play as a team, because Ollie's there in the paint and the teammates won't pass him the ball at all. And then Ollie's there to try and catch the rebound as the tall player, and instead 3 of his teammates collide into the paint to try and grab the rebound, which again is hustle, that sort of where yeah, you want to chase the rebound, so you want to rush in to the paint and get the rebound, you could argue. But again, you're also taking away from the teammates that are right there that can get the ball instead. And so I encourage y'all instead to go look him up, watch his Canada stats, watch him play, because again, we'll have to see if his teammates and his team actually let him play in Florida, because they haven't so far. But if you go watch his Canada stats, you can really go and see what I was talking about with how, again, he just makes it look so effortless. And it'll all depend, I guess, on what he looks injury-wise. Because, again, these taller defensive players, like Wemby having the blood clots, or AD now being injury-prone as well, Anthony Davis being so injury-prone, it really depends on if they're a glass cannon or not. But again, he looks like he has some good muscle on him, and we'll just have to see how he performs. And again, I will personally keep up with him and give you guys some updates, because if he ends up going into the NBA and being a crazy prospect, I definitely want to be the one that called it early. So I did the same with Chet. Chet's now got a ring with OKC, so I called that. But yeah, it's a bit of a shorter episode for this one, guys, even though I know some people like the 30-minute episodes. I usually try and go for an hour, but again, just had a lot going on, wanted to get something out for you guys. So I'll have some more to come shortly, because I'm working on a lot of videos, and I'll announce a lot of the changes that I'm going to be making to the channel soon. So stay tuned for that, guys. Again, some more stuff coming out shortly. I can't say much more than that, but there will be some changes to the channel, and I'll announce that soon. But anyway, with that said, go check out the merch, link in the description. Follow the Instagram, follow the Twitter, TikTok, all that good stuff. All the links in the description. I'm making an indie game, so go support that as well. All that good stuff. And I will see you all in the next one, guys. Nathan Burnett, episode 85.
This is not okay. This needs to stop now.